All right, looks like we are about to start. Thank you everyone for joining. I am Ashley Jameson. I am part of the People Operations team, and we are here to answer all of your 360 questions. I have colleagues from the People Business Partner and the People Operations team to help me answer any questions. So I will kick it off to Ruth to answer the first question.
Thanks, Ashley, and welcome everybody to this session. My name is Rose Takken. I'm a People Business Partner supporting parts of engineering. And I see that Will Spillane has put in the first question. I'm not sure if Will's on the call. He might not be able to make it. Will, are you here? All right, I will just vocalize for Will in this case. So his question is, we originally suspended the 360 reviews during the original height of the pandemic for good reasons. Is there a particular reason why we bring back 360 reviews now? And if so, what about this timing makes this a good idea? So thanks for the question, Will. I've put in a response here. So also in the agenda for people to read, but I will vocalize. So last year, we indeed postponed the 360 feedback cycle due to the pandemic and decided to make it optional for team members. Currently, growth and development is a huge focus for the company. As a result of the engagement survey we did in 2020, and also with our learning and development team, etc., we're really focusing on the growth and development of our teams. So in order to facilitate gathering feedback for team members' development, we have decided to leverage 360s this year again. And with this iteration, we made it shorter. It remains optional for individual contributors, but required for people managers. And also before the decision was made to roll out 360s right now, we did gather input from department heads and like, hey, is this the right time? Do you want to do this? And there were actually some division heads who were particularly asking for like, hey, can we do 360s? When can we do it? So this resulted in that we are rolling this out now. Cool. Then I see there's a second question. This is of Marcel, and he was not able to join because
I can vocalize that if you want. He's
that would be great.
One of the tech writers. So for individual contributors, why are the non-manager reviews limited to 3? And this is kind of from a tech writer perspective. It feels like 3 is quite low because we would typically think of our, kind of key inputs coming from a PM, an engineering manager, designer, support, and then some other tech writers. So I think that's where that's coming from. And it'll also be easier to guess who submitted each review if we only request 2 to 3 reviews. So people might be shy about adding their full thoughts.
Yeah, I can get back to Marcel here. And it's a valid question. We changed the amount of reviewers based on feedback we received last year. And I think we had even people that had 50 requests to get back to, and it just became unmanageable. And in order to stop that from happening, we said 3 peer reviews, but of course, if you feel like it's absolutely necessary to have more people, that's an option. And this is just to be mindful that we don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed with this request and to pick the right people for it. And then, of course, when we do them annually, you can change them up so you get different feedback from different people. And yeah, Rupert also asked if we are looking to increase the cadence. At this point, we have always done them annually, but like Bruce mentioned, that if division heads are looking for certain feedback, we can do that more often, but we don't have any other dates yet. Hope that answers your question. And I see Jim put a question down as well. He's not on the call, so I can read it to us. So he asked, can you clarify how the 360 review process is connected with the performance review process later in the year, and how the 360 review process connected with potential compensation adjustments? I believe the 360 review is not connected to either of these. If so, it would be helpful to clarify the distinctions. Bruce, are you happy to answer?
Yes, totally. Thanks for reading, Sarah. And thanks for the question as well, Jim. To quickly clarify the goals and how this might relate or not. So the feedback received in a 360 review can be used for organizational growth, team development, and your own personal development. It is a way to increase like self-awareness, uncover blind spots, for example. It is different from the performance assessment as it does not measure how we measure performance. So we measure performance based on 3 things, which is job, family, responsibilities, values, and remote working competencies. So these are different. They have different goals. The 360 review will therefore not directly impact compensation. However, as 360 feedback provides a valuable holistic overview of strengths and improvement areas, this can be used in one of many inputs or data points that would help inform a performance assessment. So I wanted to clarify that the goals are different, but it could be a part where in performance we also review strengths and improvement areas that informs as a data point. So I hope that helps clarify the question. Gonna pause if there are any follow-up questions. All right, cool. I think number 4, then Diana.
Yeah,
you have number 4.
Thanks. So I'm out of office when this starts next week. So for my own kind of nominations, I've passed those on to my manager. But for my own team, is there anything that I'm going to be blocking by not being there, or can the process just carry on?
Yes, great question. Thanks for getting ahead. I really love that. So in addition to discussing your own reviewers, it would also be great to discuss who your team members would be or direct reports would be planning to add. And why? Because you as a manager are a coach in Culture, and you have the ability to add, remove, or edit like the reviewers they have added as part of their review. If you already get ahead with them, get that conversation like, hey, you're thinking of nominating, you can skip that whole step. That's fine. So, and then it shouldn't be blocking anything over this process. So I hope that helps. Thanks.
Cool. And I've got an observation. So Ruz, have we considered, or is there a possibility maybe in the next iteration to consider timing this on a regional schedule so that regions that may be in peak vacation time right now aren't trying to deal with this process now, and other regions that it's not their peak vacation time, as an example, APAC. So is that a consideration for the rollout of 360s or not?
I think it's a good point. So thanks for adding that or vocalizing that. We have considered different timings as a group because indeed we were thinking like, oh, is this the right timing? Do we want the whole company to go through? Do we want specific divisions to go through? What is the right timing for maybe engineering over finance or marketing? The only one of the thoughts we had would be that throughout the whole year, everybody was going to need to give reviews then, or peer reviews, because they might do it cross-functionally. So that means that somebody, for example, in engineering can ask for input of somebody in sales, right? So that was a bit of a hesitation we had with that for doing it that way. But I like the regional thing. So it's definitely something we can consider in the future, or can review in the future on how that would look like without overwhelming team members the whole year with reviews. Yeah, thanks for adding.
And it looks like there is a small lag in the document. So if you do have any questions that you're unable to add to the document, feel free to add them to the chat and we can add them to the agenda to be answered.
Thank you. I think I have the next question. One of my reports is going to be on parental leave starting August until October, so the 360 timeframe essentially. Any guidance on how we should do their 360s?
Yeah, happy to jump in on this one. I would suggest that you align with the team member ahead of their leave to understand whether their preference is to review live when the reports become available or to wait until they come back. If they're leaving on August, the reports will launch before then. So hopefully there's at least a couple of days to connect to see what the preference is.
And a follow up to that. So what about other team members that might want a 360 review from them? Should we just discourage that and say, hey, that person is on leave. It would be great if you pick another person for the review?
Yeah, we wouldn't want anyone to feel obligated to kind of come back to answer reports while they're on leave. That being said, I don't know the exact dates, so maybe we can connect offline on this one too, Lucas. If it's ahead of time, maybe there's something we could do to make sure that this team member has an opportunity to get in some of those requests before they're on leave. And anything from a logistical standpoint that the ops team adds in here is welcome.
That is possible, where we could adjust things for individuals based upon circumstances like this. Absolutely.
Okay,
Right,
thank you.
next.
Yeah, I also have the next question. I have team members transitioning to my team during the 360 cycle. Any guidance on how I should coordinate with their current managers?
Yeah, I depending on the timing, if it's one of those situations, Lucas, and I think it is, well, you'll be the manager for just a couple of weeks. I would say most of the feedback here would probably come from the previous manager. I would also lean on the ops team a little bit here. What is that cutoff date in terms of syncing and culture amp to determine who the direct manager is?
It will be this week since it is a upload that we have to do. So it will be this week to cut off, preferably before Friday. But if there are any last minute changes, we can manually go in and adjust those if it makes more sense to have the current manager or the previous manager. We would just need to have either you to connect with your PvP or to connect with the ops team.
And maybe something to add here as well. Lucas, your team member can also nominate the former manager as like a peer reviewer in addition to you reviewing. That might also help, right? And then you can lean more on that specific review.
Thank you.
And one more piece here, when reports come out, if the proximity in terms of the manager switch is really close and you just had the team member as a direct report for a very short time, it can be helpful to have a 2-to-1 with the new manager and the previous manager and the team member, just so the feedback given is very holistic.
All right, now I have the next one. I had a question. Is it going to be possible to edit feedback after we've submitted the initial version of it? Reason I ask is because last time the date it was due has changed a few times, and I would have liked to have gone back and added more to my feedback and wanted to know if that's going to be possible this time.
So Ashley, yeah, and I'm not sure if you want to jump in. I don't have the definite answer, but I think it's similar to last time.
I know that this was a question last time, and I am forgetting if it was possible or if it was not possible to do. It was not, Rose.
No, I do think you can sort of save them and not submit them. So you can save them before you submit them and come back. But ultimately, I think when you have submitted them, you cannot edit them anymore. Also the purpose of why we've set this timeline up this way is that we would want to wrap up before contribute. So we generally are not planning to expand this timeline. Maybe that helps as well.
Yes, and I think we have administration rights. So if you connect, with People Connect, we will be able to edit your feedback, but I don't think you will be able to do that. And then once the deadline is over, we won't be able to edit it ourselves anymore.
Okay, thanks for the answer.
And maybe some final thing to add. I know this is a process heavy, but you can sort of wipe out, or at least reset your review, and then submit another one if there's still time within the time frame. But then you lose whatever you've written. What I've done myself, for example, is just start in a notes or in a Google Doc, which I only shared with myself, and then I would copy over things. So that might also be helpful before you submit.
And you will be able to see the questions in the slide deck that Rose put together. So if you want to start thinking about how you're going to answer some of these things, I know some people like to get a head start. You can check there and start with that Google Doc as Rose suggested.
Yeah, I think I'm next. My name is Tabo Pape, and I've been here almost a month and a half. And is 360 a warm-up for performance review, in the sense that the review that you get from 360, one can use as a starting block to a performance review to improve or do something else in order to have a good performance review?
Thanks for the question, and welcome, Tabo. We're glad to have you here. I think under question number 3, I did answer a bit of the difference between 360 and performance review. I think the recommendation would be, after your 360s, would be to look at an individual growth plan. So that's not a performance review, but to define, like, hey, what are my strengths? What are some of the improvement areas? And how can I work on these, right? So that would be a recommendation. That's something we've also did last year. We have a handbook page on individual growth plans as well. And then I think 360s are a great input to sort of work on some of your strengths and improvement areas. It's slightly different from a performance review, but of course, an individual growth plan is always a good idea, I would say. Not sure if anybody else wants to add something.
I guess another distinction is that the 360s are for the sole purpose of understanding feedback and your strengths and your improvement areas. So there aren't outputs that feed into compensation from the 360 feedback. The purpose is just kind of learning, understanding where you can improve and where you're strong. Whereas the performance review have outputs for performance and growth that feed into annual compensation. So that's another important distinction as well.
Okay, thank you.
I think I've got the next one. So I'm relatively new. I've only been here 3 months, and someone else added a +1 on here that they've been here 12 days. And so I was wondering about if it's too early to be doing this, because I feel like my team only knows like a few things about me, and it feels weird to ask someone to assess me when they really kind of barely know me, I think. So I was wondering, should I do it and just know that it's not a full picture, and that next year it'd be a much more full picture and I can sort of see how I've grown in that time, or if it's something I should sort of not worry about?
Yes, good question, Vijay, and also welcome. So the official or the default cut-off date for automatically joining 360s is June 1st. So if you've joined after June 1st, you will by default not be included in this cycle. If you do feel you want to be included, you can, and you can reach out to People Connect to be added, but generally by default, June 1st would be the cutoff date.
Looks like I'm in. All right, thank you.
I think I have the next one.
Yeah.
Is there any method for finding out, like, if someone has submitted their 360 feedback, not what they submitted, but if they did? Historically, what I've just done is every one-on-one remind them to do it. Just wondering if there's a way I could be a little more proactive so I don't have to constantly bug them for something they've already done.
It's a good question, Jason. I want to make sure I understand it. Are you talking about your direct reports, or are you talking about your peers maybe you've selected, or whether they are working on on their 360s?
In this particular case, my direct reports, to make sure A, they've submitted their submissions, and then B, they've done their reviews when, we get to that juncture.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure if that's possible in the system. Maybe Sarah or Ashley knows.
I am looking at the feedback right now. I will get back to you, Jason, on that, because that's a great question. And I think you're not going to be alone in wanting to know where your team is at in this process. So I will answer you in the doc once I find a definite answer with Culture Amp.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think Jen Parker, you have the next question.
For sure. I'm sorry, I was on another screen. So my question, I think, is something, it's definitely been +1 that the marketing department in particular would like to know, with all of our churn that we've seen lately, are the people reviewing the 360 reviews, like, is the global GitLab team accounting for the limited insights that might be offered into certain teams, such as maybe myself, by their team members or people they're directly reporting to that are somewhat newer?
I can try to answer it. I'm not sure. Do you, would you mean that for example, your manager takes that into account, or what is?
Yeah, so as we're using the 360 reviews to understand more about ourselves, and as I'm assuming our managers see our 360 reviews, are we taking into account as a team the limited insights that might be given by certain members who might not just have that much insight?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so maybe what's good context here is that your manager is the coach during your 360 review in Culture Amp. So they have a specific role where they will be able to see who you've nominated as peers and who you who will give feedback in like categorized groups. So I assume your manager will have that context, right? That maybe it's a new team, or the peers that are selected are new to the team. So that might, so I think that's good context to give to your manager also when you discuss this, right? Indicating like, hey, the feedback might be coming from team members who are not here long enough. But I think that's the context that the manager has. And the discussion of 360 feedback will only be between you and your manager. So it's not shared beyond that. So that might help. Yes. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat, yes.
I'm going to add into this. So I think that's a really valid observation, and thank you for sharing that concern. I'll talk to Craig. We talk at CMO staff, so I'll bring this up as part of our discussion point, because we just had the discussion on 360s yesterday. So we'll see if we can come back with some additional guidance or thoughts on that we can share with the teams, and maybe talk about a marketing strategy and tactics call. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Dunk.
You got it.
And maybe as an addition as well, let's say you would be nominated by a team member where you think like, hey, I'm not sure if I would be able on specific questions to give like impact or like meaningful feedback. You can like leave the question open or put like a non-applicable in there as well. So that might be helpful. It's not needed that you would put in feedback everywhere if you really think you can't give meaningful feedback, or even like skip when somebody put you as a reviewer.
Rose, should we also call out that there's technically the possibility for people to decline? If they feel that they can't provide valid feedback, they have the option to say, I'm sorry, I can't give you really good feedback, and decline entirely. They don't have to answer one or two of however many there are. They can just say, look, I appreciate the offer, but I can't.
Yeah, no, great call, Jason. Thanks for adding that. Indeed. And you can reach out to the team member as well and say like, because during the reviews, you can still add other reviewers or edit your reviewers. So I think it's a great idea of what you're saying. that if you want to decline somebody's request, you reach out to them and say like, hey, I don't think I can provide meaningful feedback right now. I would suggest you nominate another reviewer right now to go in your place.
Okay, that's all great. Thank you.
And I think we are at time, so we can answer the last few questions async. Thank you all for joining us today. And again, if you have any additional questions that come up, you can always reach out and People Connect, and the People Operations or your People Business Partner will respond. Thank you all for joining, and I hope you have a great day.